Welcome, everyone. My name is Niall Richardson. I'm a Senior Mobilization Officer at PIPS, and I'm excited to host today's International Women's Day webinar on Code 699. I am the mother of two small children who, like a lot of you, has had to balance my normal busy day-to-day with the now year-long effects of a pandemic. I'm really looking forward to hearing about your experiences and sharing in your successes today. We would like to take some time to respectfully acknowledge that our office, located in settlement now called Ottawa, is on the unceded, unsurrendered territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation. Before this land was a city, it was and remains a place for the Algonquin Anishinaabe people, whose presence here reaches back over 8,000 years. As settlers, it is our responsibility to educate ourselves on the history of the First Peoples, to learn how to be respectful of their cultures, to acknowledge their pain and our part in it. This journey of understanding is uncomfortable, but part of discovering our past and taking responsibility for how we continue to benefit from it is our duty to grow and to change in order to want to do better. Working towards change, we can be hopeful that our journey guides us to a peaceful, inclusive, and respectful future. At the beginning of our webinars, we like to provide you with an equity statement, which clearly outlines the expectations from participants. If you could please take a moment to review the statement, the link is in the chat box. As noted, the Professional Institute of the Public Service of Canada strives to create a climate that is respectful, safe, and inclusive, where we all feel welcomed and valued, and where we are supported to make our contribution and support others to make theirs. We thank you for being a part of this inclusive space. We would also like to take this opportunity to note that this International Women's Day webinar is primarily focused on the impact care leave has on non-binary and women identified. We are looking to create a safe space for participants to speak about their struggles and achievements in honor of IWD. But we'd like to make clear that we support all members who need access to care leave. All participants should feel comfortable sharing their experiences, and we look forward to developing additional webinars on care leave in the near future. I am joined by our president, Debi Daviau. Debi became the 52nd president of the Public Service, or of the Professional Institute of the Public Service of Canada on January 1st, 2014. Working as a computer systems analyst at Human Resources and Skills Development Canada, Debi became progressively more engaged in union activities, first as a steward and member of several PIPS bargaining and consultation teams. From the beginning of her mandate, Debi has sought to introduce new and innovative ways to address the concerns of members. She has been instrumental in implementing new member engagement strategies and broadening and strengthening alliances within and beyond the labor movement. She is also one of only a handful of women leaders within the labor movement and is a strong advocate for the issues that affect us most. Welcome, Debi.
Thanks so much, Niall. And hi, everyone. I'm really excited to be here with you today to talk about how we can both celebrate PIP's working heroes throughout the pandemic on behalf of Canadians. And also we want to ensure that we have the care leave that we need when we need it. We all know that the vast majority of federal public servants have been able to work through the crisis requiring no extra leave. We also know that throughout the pandemic, childcare duties and the associated financial burden has disproportionately fallen on women. The government's own gender-based analysis of the 699 code confirmed this. To date, the use of code 699 is minimal, but when it's needed, it is needed. And I'm so pleased to join you today to hear your stories and ideas on how we can make the federal public service more inclusive, diverse, and supportive for all women in the workplace, in fact, for all employees in the workplace. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, Debi. I'm also joined today by Eleanor McGrath from our research team and Marie-Hélène Touras, an employment relations officer from the PIPS Quebec Regional Office. They will be giving us an overview on the Code 699 survey results, as well as the grievance filed on your behalf. Before we get started, I'd like to go over some of the technical details of the webinar platform to ensure that everyone can actively participate in today's session. As you've likely realized, the audio is being provided through the webinar service. To reduce background noise and ensure the best quality sound, we have muted all participants. If you'd like to ask a question or make a comment, open the chat tab in Zoom. The chat tab can be accessed from the Control tab, located at the bottom of your screen. When you click on the chat icon, the chat window will appear. If you are in full screen mode, it will appear in a window that you can move around your screen. If you are not in full screen mode, the chat will appear on the right side of your screen. To use the chat feature, type a message in the box and press enter. For those logging in on mobile, the same process will apply. Select the chat icon located at the bottom of your screen, enter your questions, and hit send. Please bear in mind that opening the chat function on your mobile device will temporarily hide the slide deck. My lovely colleague, Shelley, will be monitoring the chat box throughout the session, so if you have any issues, please don't hesitate to send a message. In the center of your screen, you should currently see the title slide deck. As we move through the presentation, you'll see the slides change. If at any point you don't see the slides change or lose visual connection, please let us know in the chat box. Does anyone have any questions about how to use the webinar platform before we begin? During today's session, we'll look to provide a basic overview of the results from our Code 699 survey and what those results mean, an overview of the Code 699 grievance PIPS has filed on your behalf, an opportunity to ask questions about the survey results and grievance process, and most importantly, a space to have a conversation about care leave and how it's impacting you. I'd like to turn it over now to President Debi Daviau.
Thanks again, Niall. I'm so proud of the work that our members have done and continue to do. I've always known our contributions, but the pandemic has really shone a light on the invaluable public services that PIPS members provide. To name just a few, and by far not an exhaustive list, I think we can take a collective moment to be proud of PIPS members at the Canada Revenue Agency, who with the assistance from members at ESDC and Shared Services Canada, built the systems to get the pandemic benefits Canadians desperately needed quickly. Our healthcare professionals never missed a beat. They continue to make sacrifices to work on the front lines. Our members at the CFIA continued to ensure our food was safe, despite the personal risk. Laboratories were converted to help with COVID testing and to make hand sanitizer. And our members worked miracles to get personal protective equipment to those who needed it. We built the technical infrastructure, often requiring members to be in the office to allow other public servants to continue their work from the safety of their homes. And our scientists pivoted to important research to help fight against COVID-19. While our members were working tirelessly, they could depend on Code 699 leave in cases where they had to prioritize their family or health. In November, we launched the Code 699 survey to hear about your experiences and garner some data that we could use moving forward in our fight for care leave. The results, which we will review now, are not surprising, but make clear just how much work we have left to do so that all members are able to balance work and life.
Thanks so much, Debbie. Eleanor, would you like to begin the Code 699 survey results presentation, please?
Thanks, Niall. Thanks, Debbie. So hi, everyone. I'm Eleanor, and I'm a research officer at PIPS. I'm also a mom to a fabulous little toddler, and I've been working from home since March 2020. I'm really excited to share the results of the Code 699 survey with you today. So the survey was conducted in November 2020 with all PIPS members in the Federal Public Service who had access to 699 leave. It was an online survey with a convenient sample. All of that means basically that people who wanted to fill it out did. We had a great response. So we had over 15,000 responses to our survey, which is about 28% of those who received the invitation. Of course, it varies a little bit by question. In terms of the actual, oops, sorry about that. In terms of the actual Demographics, we had about 46% women responding, 51% men, and 1% trans, non-binary, or two-spirit. The median age group was about 40 to 49, and we had representation from over 60 departments, agencies, and offices with workers from all provinces and territories, plus international. About 41% of our respondents had requested 699 leave, and the majority asked for it for family care reasons, overwhelmingly for the care of children. This is roughly comparable to the federal government's own statistics. And the really good news is that of those who requested it, 95% were granted that leave. But let's take a closer look at the group of folks who were denied their 699 leave. We know from many, many studies throughout the pandemic that it has disproportionately affected women compared to men. And so was this true for access to supportive 699 leave during the pandemic? So how likely are you to be denied 699 leave? Well, it turns out that the odds are different depending on who you are. Our baseline is the people who selected no equity group affiliation, a group which, given the options, we can presume includes primarily white, cisgender, heterosexual, able-bodied men. And we can imagine that if the rules for 699 leave were clear and consistently applied, then everyone should be denied leave at approximately the same rate. But it turns out that that's not the case. So first we look at all women. So all women together were twice as likely to be denied 699 leave compared to people who reported no equity group affiliation. But then the question was which women were most disproportionately affected? And in this case, we see that women belonging to no additional equity group were 1.7 times more likely to be denied their 699 leave compared to the group that includes men. While those women who belonged to any second equity group were even more disproportionately affected. LGBTQ2S+ women were 2.2 times more likely to be denied. Racialized women were 2.8 times more likely to be denied. Indigenous women were 3.5 times more likely to be denied. And women with disabilities were a staggering 5 times more likely to be denied 699 leave compared to people with no equity group affiliation. These bubbles could, of course, be overlapping, and the disparities might be different if we considered people who selected 1, 2, 3, or more equity group affiliations. So the next question was, why was your 699 leave request denied? And so on the following slides, I'm going to present the voices of women on why they were denied 699 leave. One thing that I would like to note is that none of these responses were unique or one-offs. They were shared by multiple participants. So the first one, I never got a response to my request. I could not use code 699 due to school and daycare being open, and it was my choice to keep my children home for virtual learning. They said that I could hire daycare for my child in August. I was denied leave because I was told that I could work with children there. They didn't want to report too many 699 hours. And lastly, no reason given. So our data shows that, like in other sectors and workplaces, women have been disproportionately bearing the burden of the pandemic compared to men, and even more so for women with intersecting identities. The reasons for being denied 699 leave lack compassion and understanding of the realities of pandemic life.
Thank you, Eleanor. That was a really interesting analysis. I'd just like to remind everyone that we'll have time for questions on the survey results, as well as this next section on the grievance at the end of the presentation. We would now just like to take a moment to do a quick poll on your experience with code 699. If you could please take a moment to answer these questions, the screen should pop up for you shortly. Have you used Code 699? Were you ever denied? And what other leave have you used? Just let that poll run for just a minute longer. Perfect. We'll just end the poll there if that's all right. It looks like participants today, about 58% have used Code 699. 25% of people were denied who are on the call today. And the other leave option that most people ended up using was sick leave and family leave. I really look forward to hearing about your experiences a little later in the webinar when we sort of open up the conversation on care leave and the impacts of the pandemic as well. So thank you very much for participating.
Yes, for sure. Thank you for sharing your feedback and experiences, because we really need to be able to demonstrate how important these leave provisions are in our fight to protect them. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you, Debbie. We'll now move on to the Code 699 grievance. I have Marie-Hélène here. Would you like to continue the presentation for us?
Thanks, Niall. Thanks, Debbie. Hello, everyone. I'm a new ERO working from the Quebec regional office. I'm also a single mom with 2 young kids, and I've been working from home since last March. So the 699 issue topic is very important to me. So PIPS members have risen to the unprecedented challenges caused by COVID-19. You all stepped up across the whole public service to find ways to continue to provide professional services to everyone in Canada. In doing so, our members carry the compounded burdens this pandemic impose on their health, their wellness, and their family. From the start of the pandemic, PIPS pushed employers to acknowledge and address the disproportionate impact COVID-19 imposed on women and all equity-seeking groups. The Treasury Board initially responded by instructing departments to support our members through increased remote work, increased work flexibility, and the provision of Code 699 leave. However, in November 2020, the Treasury Board released revised policy guidance to departments. This revised policy appeared to be designed to discourage Code 699 leave requests and introduce hurdles for members with legitimate child, elder, and other care needs. Acting together with partner unions across the federal public service, PIPS filed policy grievances on behalf of our Treasury Board groups to highlight the discriminatory impacts of this change in policy. In workplaces and in communities across the country, PIPS stewards have stepped up to help individual members access workplace support during this pandemic. With the support of PIPS staff, PIPS stewards have supported our members in consultation with management about their situation, challenged discriminatory denials of support like flexible work arrangement, remote work, and Code 699 leave, and help our members negotiate reasonable accommodation solutions that met their needs. So faced of that sudden change of policy from Treasury Board, in November, the Treasury Board started to advise department to stop, to decrease the allowing using the Code 699. PIPs and allies file policy grievances on your behalf. And stewards are leading the way to help you access workplace support since then. So what was the content of the policy grievance? What it challenges is that when it all began, the Code 699 is other leave with pay. For what the collective agreement says is for purposes other than those specified in the agreement, which is the exact position we were facing with this pandemic and remote work and giving care at home, staying home with children. And the fact that the policy grievance contest is that we contest that employees should exhaust all other type of paid leave or be forced to use other type of paid leave. And we also say that it's in contravention with the provision of the collective agreement because those situations fall specifically under that clause. And that was the intent that was that the party had when they negotiated that clause. So there is no other clause in the collective agreement that specifies that we should have that type of leave in this specific situation. But also, if you read the article of the collective agreement, it says that the leave should be allowed by management on a discretionary basis. So if you look, but discretion should be used by management in a reasonable way. But is it reasonable discretion if you look at all the answers we got for the reason that 699 leave was denied? They said I could hire daycare for my child in August. Is that reasonable when daycares are closed or day camp are closed? And we have public health says that kids should be staying home. It's not reasonable to me. Or if you being said leave, I was denied leave because I was told I could work with my child there. So is that reasonable, working from home with 2 or 3 kids, working from the kitchen table, working an 8-hour shift? So for us, it's unreasonable that an amount of hours or a day was denied under the 699 leave. So, so the other one, a choice to keep our family safe. I could not use 699 due to school and daycare being open, and it was my choice to keep my children home from virtual learning. So we're saying that all this, it's unreasonable exercise of management right. It's under this that the policy agreement was filed. And also we're alleging that it's the impact of denying the 699 leave is also discriminatory, and especially towards women because of our family status or family related obligation. When it's denied, it's discriminatory.
Thank you, Marie-Hélène. We'll now take some time for some questions on the Code 699 survey results and the grievance. If you'd like to either raise your hand by clicking on that little raised hand icon down at the bottom of your screen, and we'll unmute you, or you can type your question into the chat box and I'll read them out loud. We'll do our best to answer everyone's question. And just one little reminder, if you do choose to do a live question, you'll need to accept our unmute request, which should pop up so that everyone can hear you. So please take a minute if you have any questions on the Code 699 survey results and the grievance.
Maybe while you're doing that, I'll just fill in the time because I see that there's no hands yet, and let you know a little bit about me and why this is super important to me. I'm a single mom. I spent my first half of my career in the public service and the latter half as a union representative, having to, balance that all with 3 children who are now grown, but still at home. So the responsibilities remain. And I personally have felt the burden of having to balance all the extra requirements with safety measures and needing to keep, myself and my family safe. I also have a chronic illness. I have Crohn's. So I'm sure glad that PIPS as an employer is respecting the needs of our staff when it comes to caring for themselves and for others during the pandemic. And it's something that I feel very passionate about advocating for all our members with the public service. So I was hoping I'd generate some questions, but I'm not sure if there are any yet.
I do have a question. I have a question from Sama. Will the policy grievance cover a member who did not grieve due to fear of reprisal? Can members still apply for this policy grievance?
You want to answer that, Debbie?
I'll let you, Marianne. You go ahead.
Okay. A policy grievance is for the benefit of all employees. It's basically the union that says to the employer, that's not, you should be applying or applying the article of the collective agreement. You're doing, it's not the meaning, it's not the intent. So you're all covered by this, but employees also have the privilege to file an individual grievance that it has nothing to do with the policy grievance. So if you've been denied a 699 leave, you should definitely talk to your steward or your ERO in your regional office, and they will help you out to file an individual grievance. But the policy grievance is the union that filed it for your benefit to tell Treasury Board, you should continue applying the 699 leave, other leave with pay, as you did back in March. And that was the intent of the parties when it was negotiated during bargaining.
Yeah, and so you're already covered off by the policy grievance at least, but you could follow through on an individual one as well. I saw there was a question in the chat about how the Treasury Board came to this policy. It didn't start as a policy. It starts as an article in our collective agreement that we negotiated for just this purpose, an unforeseen circumstance for which public servants would need to take leave. And so, you have sick leave defined, and you have annual leave defined, and parental leave, but none of those codes really directly apply to the situation where, for example, schools shut down, or schools and daycare shut down, or you become ill from COVID-19. And so that code, as Mary Hélène explained, is specifically for this type of thing. So somewhere along the way, the Parliamentary Budget Officer started to take a look at the cost of the use of 699. And from our perspective, it was very low. Like, it represented about a 5% reduction in productivity in the public sector during the first several months of the pandemic, and I thought that was really quite a low number. But this put more pressure on departments and agencies to report more thoroughly, but also to use less of the code. And different departments dealt with it in different ways. And some came right out and said, we're no longer allowing the use of code 699. That's something we would grieve as being arbitrary. But most started doing things even before the Treasury Board put the policy in place, a policy that was clearly meant to appease a number of these departments and agencies and the parliamentary budget officer, I think, in terms of the cost of that leave. And it's really unfortunate because the scientific facts and evidence that support the need for that leave didn't change. Nothing changed. Just the political will maybe changed around this item. And that's really what we're arguing, that this is a viable mechanism to provide leave when it's not defined elsewhere in the collective agreement. And the policy that they suddenly came up with to only allow it under particular circumstances was arbitrary. So.
Thank you, Debbie. We're going to move to a live question from Donna. Donna, would you like to ask your question or share your experience? You'll just need to unmute yourself.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, so my situation that I've been experiencing, I had a very ill father at home that became extremely ill in November. And in December, he became palliative and wanted to die at home. So I asked to be approved for 699 leave because I felt with what was going on with COVID and my situation, and having both of my parents are 84 and 86 and in the community and still living at home. So they're the vulnerable population that, and I'm their only daughter, their only child. I'm the only person really that could be giving them care during this very difficult time. I'm a nurse as well, and I was denied. And I was made use up all of my vacation, all of my banked sick time to care for my dad. My dad did pass away January 17th at home. Unfortunately, while caring for my dad, I did injure myself because he was bedridden for 6 weeks. So I have injured myself. Now I'm trying to get myself better. And I've had to go on to, so I did use all of my sick leave, and they did grant me to go, I guess, in the negative with my sick leave. So I've done that as well. And now I'm applying for EI sick benefits so I can get myself better to go back to work eventually when.
Oh my goodness.
So that's.
I'm so sorry for that. How horrible to.
That's my story. And it has been one heck of a time. And not feeling supported at all by my workplace.
No, and this is what's happening is, people are affected in many different ways during the pandemic. And in some cases, having been denied 699, they continued to work and injured themselves further, and it just makes it worse. That's not in anybody's best interest. So I think, at least in your individual case, you would want to reach out to one of our employment relations officers just to ensure that proper protocols have been followed. Where they're out of line with the Treasury Board policy, that's easy. Where they're in line with the policy, but we disagree with the fairness of it, then we'll fight it through these other avenues. But yeah, it's so very difficult. Technically, that leave would fall under, family related or caregiving leave, but caregiving leave is unpaid leave. And that's not what we're looking for to support our members through this pandemic and the increased pressures on women. I think it really, your story really demonstrates the kinds of pressures that people are going through.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Did you guys have anything to add? No? Mary Ellen? No?
I agree with you, Debbie. This is very sad, and you should definitely reach out to an ERO so they could assess your case and what could be done with it. But this is exactly what we said. There's some type of situation during COVID, during the pandemic, where the pandemic has caused a burden and has given no choice to the employee to stay home or giving care, or when there's no other option because of the pandemic, that's when 699 is appropriate.
Yeah, and we've really fought for there to be a better structure around it, and it not just be up to every individual supervisor.
Yeah.
You know, whether they grant it or not, if they like you or they don't like you, or they believe you or they don't believe you. We'd like for there to be proper structure so that you know none of those factors prevent you from being able to access the leave you need.
I noticed Donna just had a follow up. How do I find out who my employment relations officer is?
It is. I think the office numbers are listed on the website for sure. So, but I actually feel a bit ignorant right now because I'm not sure how that's working during the pandemic. Mary-Hélène, could you
go in your region? Which region are you?
She's not sure.
Okay.
But in which province do you live?
You know what, Donna, if you want to email bettertogether@pipsc.ca, we will be happy to direct you to your employment relations officer.
Yeah, they will direct you to the right one.
Exactly. So we have 6 regional offices and a national office, and so there's an Atlantic office, there's a Quebec office, there's a National Capital Region office, an Ontario office, and a Prairies Northwest Territories office, and a BC Yukon office. So that's how we're sort of broken down, just as an FYI to anybody on the call who might want to know where we're at. I'm just, the question I wondered was, I didn't know how the phones were working during the pandemic, but I'm sure they've been forwarded or something along those lines. So,
yeah.
I'm going to go to another live question from Karen. Karen, would you like to ask your question? Just take a moment.
Hi there. Sorry, it was a rogue hand up. I hit something by mistake. Sorry about that.
Oh, that's okay. Nice to hear from you, Karen.
Thanks.
No problem. I'll go to a question.
We've got a rogue hand on our hands.
Well, it happens. It's very attractive at the bottom of the screen. I have a question from Julie Ann. What do we hope to get from the grievance and when? I am also a single mom with 3 kids at home, and it has been literally impossible to do my 37.5 hours a week, but I'm not allowed to use 699. So now what?
Yeah, technically, we should be challenging the fact that you're not allowed to use 699. In a vast majority of the cases, we've been able to come to some satisfactory resolution once we're intervening. The trouble is that so many people are being told they can't, and they just accept that, and they end up in a big struggle. So I'll turn it to Mary-Hélène to answer the question as to what we hope to achieve through the grievance, but don't wait for our policy grievance. That's to kind of set the stage for everybody. But if you've got a specific circumstance and you're being told that you need to take all your vacation and all your sick time and all your whatever to cover off leave that should rightfully be under code 699, then we need to address that situation individually. Mary-Hélène?
Yeah, exactly. Debbie's right. You should, we don't want you to exhaust all your other type of paid leave or vacations and stuff like that. So if you've been denied, you should definitely file an individual grievance. But what's expecting, what we want to achieve with a policy grievance is that we want Treasury Board to return to the past practice, the way they use to apply the other leave with pay, 699, like they used to do in back in March. We don't want them to deny them automatically. We want them to use the managers to use their discretionary decision, like reasonably, not saying, because I've heard a lot in many cases, like, well, we were told to stop you should not to exhaust all other type of leave. Also, if it's discriminatory, like Debbie and myself, we're single parents. So what should I be doing if my kids daycare or school is closed? What I should be doing? And I can work, let's say, 4 or 5 hours from home. In some cases, I've seen where the manager said, well, use your vacation. No. Like it's specified that the article in the collective agreement is specified for these type of situations. There's no other type of leave.
And sometimes your managers, your supervisors will need to be shaken up a little. You know, sometimes we just need to advise them about how. Like I noticed a question in the chat about you know, you're a manager, you're a supervisor, you have to follow the policy. Yes, but the policy actually leaves a certain amount of discretion to each individual manager to do the right thing. And you know, you have the ability to work with employees and union reps to come to a satisfactory solution. As Mary-Hélène said, maybe you can work 5 hours. Maybe we need to talk about flexible working hours or you know, other mechanisms to allow people to be able to get their as much work as they can done, recognizing that we also don't want managers asking employees to work outside of working hours. We don't want them telling you couldn't put in your work hours while your kids were awake, so when they go to bed at 8:30, you can start your workday then. I mean, that's just a recipe for disaster and burnout. And, you know, as we mentioned, the government's own gender-based analysis on this shows that women are being impacted in a worse way. And that's fundamentally why we're challenging it so vigorously, because, you know, you can't claim to want to support gender equality and diversity and inclusiveness in the federal public service without providing these kinds of important supports during the pandemic.
Yeah,
perfect. Thank you so much, Debbie and Marie-Hélène, for answering those questions. And thank you everyone for sharing those questions with us today. We're gonna move on to sort of a little bit more, it's very similar to what we've been doing now, but really sharing your stories and starting a little bit of a conversation on the impacts that the pandemic have had on you. So the next part, we're really focusing on your experience. I'm going to start just with a little poll, which I'm sure you will all be able to answer quite easily, on your stress level. We're just curious how everyone's feeling, honestly. So if you want to take a minute to let us know how you're feeling. Yeah, unsurprisingly, the numbers are coming in quickly. People are feeling stressed. I think
Darn it, it won't let me vote. I wanted to vote. I am extremely stressed, but I couldn't.
It's okay. We know that it is a lot to balance sort of your normal day to day. And clearly it's a challenge for everyone. And I really appreciate everyone answering very honestly. We've got 50% of people saying that they are pretty stressed. which is not good to hear, honestly. But let's open up and sort of chat about that a bit more. We're going to do the same thing. You can raise your hand and you can speak live, which is, we love to hear your voice, honestly. Or you can type your answers in the chat box and you can hear my voice say your thoughts. If you want to tell us your experience in trying to balance your work, your life, and the pandemic, how has the pandemic impacted your work life? Can you, for that question, you can talk about your experiences with care leave accommodations or more generally about balancing everything. Also, how do you feel the pandemic may impact your career advancement? Again, you can talk about care leave, working remotely, flexible hours, or any other kind of impact you think that the pandemic might have had or has on your career. So we'll begin that.
I see there's some stories already coming into the chat. Thank you so much for those. And it breaks my heart, but it is so helpful for us to know exactly what types of situations are going on the ground. If there's one thing I miss as a full-time president, it's that ongoing workplace experience. I guess we're all missing the ongoing workplace experience, but it's that exchange with colleagues about what they're experiencing. So thank you so much for these stories.
I have Christine shared, I was told that the process to get 699 approved through senior management is difficult as it is no longer up to my immediate manager to approve. I was told to use up my sick leave for the hours I could not work. I am the primary caregiver and primary breadwinner for my family, and I have 3 young children. I worked flexible hours on weekends and evenings, but I could not maintain that for months on end. Plus, I have my own mental health issues with anxiety and depression.
Yeah, you know, we tried so hard to get the Treasury Board to the table to have a discussion around what other measures could be put in place. Like if it started to become clear that they didn't have an appetite for the continued use of 699 to the same extent. And so we actually put forward a number of recommendations around how people could legitimately access leave with some adjustments to the collective agreement. And so, you know, even things like looking at leave without pay type codes and taking some of the barriers of those away, allowing people to negotiate flexible working hours or job sharing. You know, I see there was a question in there about assigning work and how difficult that is during the pandemic. You know, my experience just has been that those of my employees who have children sometimes need to check out for a little while, and the rest of us just have to kind of pick up the slack and or reduce our expectations, because that's really going to be a part of managing all this, is having a reasonable set of expectations for what can be accomplished. And you know, as for the comment around this being out of managers' hands, that's like a decision that's being taken on a departmental basis or an agency basis. And so you know, it could very well be that the deputy head is issuing some instructions from on high that they no longer have this authority. But if you look at our collective agreement, they do have the authority. They do have the discretion. That discretion has not been taken away through the Treasury Board's policy. It's defined in the collective agreement. So they just have to be willing to exercise their management rights. And like I say, where that message is coming down from above, we're working on trying to break that message from the top down as well.
Thank you, Debbie. I have another shared experience from Karen over the phone. So we're going to unmute you, Karen. Just a reminder to accept our unmute request so that everybody can hear you.
Hi there, thanks. My question was about will probably be covered in the next bullet about the grievance process itself, but uh, are you able to indicate how many individual grievances have been launched and how successful are they? I didn't realize that that was even an option, and we've just been told to kind of suck it up. It is what it is. And yeah, I mean, I guess I need to get in further touch about that. But have there been a lot of individual grievances launched on this topic?
There has been a few. It's hard to say like across the country because every regions have different public health recommendations. Let's say in Quebec, it was more, and in Montreal, it was, we had curfews and stuff. And, but for myself, like say in the Quebec region, we had quite a few. It came more from as of November, December, and right now. But I must say I've been successful on all of them because they were unreasonable, you know,
Yeah.
like because you need to know like there's some type of leaves that are not related to COVID that are defined or specified in the collective agreement. So you have to use those type of leave. But when it was for COVID reasons and pandemic reasons and stuff, for shutdown of daycare or kids being sent home because the school class has just shut down or closed down, you know, that was the type of grievances I filed. And sometimes without even filing a grievance, I would just call the manager and say, hey, do I need to file a grievance? Because it seems to me that this is pretty unreasonable. And
Yeah.
we've been quite so successful at it, eh, Debi?
Yeah, so sometimes it just takes, and that's why I said when we know about it, we've been quite successful at being able to advocate for adequate provisions for individual members, even if we're still struggling to get sort of the overall policy changed. So, you know, so there's sort of two tracks here. So if you or somebody you know is experiencing issues, for sure, have them reach out to us. It may be that it isn't classified as a pandemic type leave, and we'll let you know if that's the case. But chances are, you know, there's something we can do, and usually it's just convincing management to do the right thing before the grievance even makes it to a hearing. So, but you got to get somebody, got to let somebody know so we can do something to help you.
Perfect. I think we have time for about two more questions, shared experiences, and then unfortunately we'll have to end for today.
I know that went fast.
I know. I have a next question or comment, shared experience from Terry Lynn. I'm still not comfortable sending my school-age kids to March break camp. In the past, this is something I would always do, but I feel that until more people are vaccinated, I'm just not comfortable. So I was told that I would have to use my vacation time. Is this an example of something that 699 should be used for?
Yeah, we had one of those. What's hard in this specific case, I'm saying that without knowing all the facts and the past and what's going on in your department and stuff, but it's if your kid doesn't have like the doctor says it's okay, doesn't have a precondition and stuff like that, and if the camp is open and all the doesn't have a precondition, it's gonna be hard to not balance. But sometimes what we succeeded in achieving, it was like doing halfway. You know, you send them a little bit or at the time, and the employer, it's kind of everybody would do his part in there. But I'm just saying that without knowing all the facts of your situation.
I think March break and even Christmas break, they're a little bit of an anomaly in all of this, because normally you would have had to find care for your kids during March break. whether it was sending them to camp or taking the week off work yourself. Whether there was a pandemic or not, you would have had to find some care for your kids during this period. And that's one excuse the employer is often giving, that the pandemic isn't the reason why you need daycare for the March break or camp or whatever it is. It's because it's the break from school and you deal with it every year. And how do you normally deal with it? And if you normally deal with it by sending them to camp, and as Mary Chantal said, or Mary Hélène said, sorry, you have, your child has a precondition or is at risk in some way, so that you don't feel safe sending them to the camp, then you might be in a situation where, as Mary Hélène pointed out, we need to have a discussion with the employer and each do a little bit of our part. But there's very likely something we can do to help. And often it just starts with us educating your management and pushing the envelope on a grievance only when we have to.
I'm going to go to one last question from Christine. We were told at the CRA that 699 was not an option if we did virtual school by choice. As such, I never even tried to apply for 699 and have been using other leave provisions. Will that impact any eligibility for the grievance?
Not the policy grievance, but you can't file an individual grievance unless you've been denied. So you could apply now and get denied, and that would qualify you for an individual grievance as well. So it's never too late to actually apply. And yes, that was a very sneaky tool they used at CRA when they had management spreading the word around that nobody could use it. And most people didn't question it. So as you say, they've used up all their other leave, or they've burnt out trying to meet the needs of everybody. And that was a very sneaky thing that was done. And I know our union reps over at CRA have been fighting really hard to undo that, or to challenge each and every situation where people are denied, and sometimes successfully. So don't hesitate to reach out to your steward or one of our EROs, because that's not true. It's not true that you can't take 699. There are some new criteria around it, even at CRA, where the Treasury Board policy doesn't directly apply. They have their own policy, but it's fairly aligned, or the issues are aligned with the issues we have at the Treasury Board as well. So
we have the same language in the collective agreement where it says other type of leave for other specific reasons that are not defined elsewhere in the collective agreement. And it's true, CRA did that. And I myself won quite a few grievances there because managers were told to just deny them automatically.
And that's arbitrary. Yeah, and they can't exercise their discretion that way. Yeah, it's unreasonable. So anyways, just to say, it's not too late to challenge it. And I'm sorry if you haven't heard about the work going on in the background. It's probably because we haven't yet been successful at beating it at the national level. But we have been very successful on individual levels. So do reach out to us. I'm sure there's something we can do.
I want to thank everyone for their questions and for sharing their stories today. I wish we had more time. Honestly, this has been really amazing to hear from all of you. I want to reiterate that you can send any follow-up questions to bettertogether@pipsc.ca. We've been sharing that over in the chat box. Also, please feel free to share your stories. We do read those emails, and I think it helps bolster sort of our work when we have those short stories to share with people. We'll just briefly review some of the resources that are available to you. Just like Marie-Hélène and Debbie have said multiple times, your first step when you're faced with a care leave issue at work is your steward. So reach out and see what they can do as far as duty to accommodate discussions with your employer. If those discussions haven't gone well, employment relation officers are there to take a look at what next steps can be taken. And ultimately, the best way to get care leave that you and your colleagues need is to make it a priority in the next round of bargaining. Let's continue to fight for more permanent solutions. Temporary care leave during a pandemic is a must, obviously, but looking towards the future, care leave that's written into your collective agreements, that's always there when you need it, is what we need to be working towards. I'll let Debbie have a last word here.
Thank you so much. I know we're pretty much out of time, but I've been reading the chat, and I wanted to let you know that when you reach out to a steward or an ERO, it's confidential. But our stewards are volunteers, and they're not, trained professionals in this field. And so if you feel uncomfortable reaching out to a steward, reach out to one of our staff members, our employment relations officers. Your file is completely confidential. Even I won't know about it. And it will stay with them. So don't hesitate to do that. Nobody will be aware of your discussions other than our resources, our staff. And thank you so much for coming out today. Thank you for sharing your stories. I have been reading the chat. However, it's possible I've missed something. So if you want to, do something like pursue following up on a grievance or that sort of thing, please take that next step. It won't happen automatically as a result of us discussing this in the chat, just to make sure your issue doesn't fall through the cracks. My memory only goes so far. So thank you so much again, really appreciate it. And I hope we'll have more chances to have this exchange.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm seeing a lot of comments in the chat that people would like more sessions like this, and I know we like doing it. So we will look to develop more sessions for you guys to be able to share your experiences and ask your questions. And don't forget, you can reach out to us at bettertogether@pipsc.ca. And we, of course, want to thank you all. A happy belated International Women's Day as well. Thank you, everyone.
Exactly. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.